In the framework essay, Psychological Capacities for Ethical Adulthood, I laid out what I see as some of the most basic capacities a person might want to explore if they're interested in living as an ethical adult after certainty collapses. A lot of adults have a hard time staying emotionally and mentally steady once their lives derail. And all lives derail at some point. We all meet that moment when we're convinced that what we thought was true has stopped being true. When what we thought was reality is no longer reality. A relationship changes, a role changes, a body that used to cooperate stops cooperating. A mind that used to feel sharp shifts. And if you're interested in growing into someone who can actually inhabit this world with all its challenges without collapsing under the weight of it, and without sidestepping into ways of being that harm other people, then this work is for you. Now, ethical adulthood, as I see it, has 5 capacities, and we begin with discomfort. Tolerating discomfort is tier 1, because when we can't tolerate activation, parts of us take over. And when that happens, repair becomes harder, grief becomes harder, understanding power becomes harder, and ethical action becomes much harder to access from self. And if we can't stay steady, when we're uncomfortable, we will keep offboarding that discomfort, and everything downstream turns into damage control rather than ethical adulthood. Discomfort comes first because every other capacity depends on staying self-led when you don't feel safe, certain, or approved. When we get stressed, our nervous system can become a kind of internal authoritarian dictator. It narrows perception, rushes us into certainty, and convinces us we must act now. That doesn't mean the nervous system is the enemy. It means it's powerful and efficient. Popular culture also talks about ego being a source of what motivates us to behave. Modern psychology talks about nervous systems. Often those conversations don't get integrated in a way that helps us in real life. Here's the most useful integration I know, especially if you're trying to understand why discomfort can hijack your good intentions. I'm explaining this because it helps people to keep from shaming themselves. If your system is lit up, your good intentions don't have full access to the controls. The nervous system is our hardware, so to speak, sympathetic and parasympathetic. The sympathetic nervous system gives us the capabilities of fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. Hormones, heart rate variability, muscle tension, breath patterns, sensory perception. When a person is dysregulated, their perception narrows. Ambiguity can look like threat. Shame can make neutral feedback feel like attack. In freeze, options feel non-existent. Under stress, the future can feel catastrophic. Simply feeling tears can throw a person into panic. So the nervous system filters what we can perceive as reality. Now the ego, our narrative identity. In modern psychological terms, the ego is our concept of self, the story we tell about who we are, what our life means, and what counts as real. It's the ego that is interpreting the nervous system's signals. If the body sends danger cues, faster heart rate, shallow breathing, chest tightness, the mind feels the shift and throws up a headline, something like, well, this is not safe. Ego is busy assigning meaning, this is a threat to me, to the event that caused the nervous system to spike and make us uncomfortable. Well, then the body reads that headline and ramps up the nervous system response. And the mind feels the ramp up and concludes, see, it really is dangerous. And then the loop begins. Thought narrows, breathing changes, the body tightens, more meaning gets generated. The ego and the nervous system, well, they grew up together, and they're intimately woven together. They recognize each other. So the loop is recursive. Body leads to story, story leads to body, body leads to story. We can't reason our way out of nervous system activation. And insight doesn't override adrenaline. Intelligence doesn't regulate cortisol. So I assert we need to stabilize physiology first. Give the system time for perception to widen. Then thinking gets clearer. That's true. And it's insufficient. If we stop there, we miss the deeper reason discomfort is so central for all of us. Why are we thrown about so much in relationship? Why can a perfectly normal event, well, to those around us, feel like a crisis inside our own systems? Internal family systems, or IFS, gives an essential answer. It isn't our self that has become destabilized. That's self with a capital S. The self isn't threatened by discomfort. A part of us is. Well, let's get some clarity around IFS. What is self, ego, and parts? Let me define these terms, at least for our purposes here in this essay. Self in IFS refers to the undamaged, non-reactive core of a person, the aspect of consciousness that is inherently calm, curious, compassionate, and capable of leadership. It is not a part, not a role, not a defense. It is the steady presence within us that can notice parts without being overwhelmed by them. When self is leading, we experience clarity without rigidity, power without aggression, and tenderness without collapse. Self does not need to win, withdraw, or perform. It can simply relate. I kind of think of self as the ethical adult we all want to be when we grow up. May I say, it is the adult I want to be when I grow up. I'm 60 years old, and yes, I am still growing up. If you're younger than I am, please give yourself a very big break. You're not immature. You're emerging. And if you're older than I am, also give yourself a break. Ego in this context refers to narrative identity, the story-based sense of me. shaped by conditioning, attachment, trauma, our culture, the temperament we were born with, and life experience. Ego is not evil. Ego is meaning making. It helps us navigate life. But when the system is activated, the nervous system that is, ego can become rigid and reactive. It can interpret nervous system signals as threat, insult, danger, failure, abandonment, based on what has happened before. IFS adds another layer that matters here. We're not one unified me. We have parts. Some parts move to dominate. Some parts move to flee. Some parts freeze. Some parts argue or perform. Parts can be terrified, humiliated, vigilant. Parts can be young. Parts can be carrying burdens that make perfect sense in the context of what they lived through. Parts are not pathology. Parts are internal roles, adaptations, and protective strategies that developed for a reason. They often carry burdens that were formed when we were young and had limited resources. Some parts manage life to prevent pain. Some parts put out fires when the pain breaks through. Some parts carry the pain directly. So, when discomfort hits, the IFS move is this. It's not, I am upset. It's, a part of me is upset. This is not wordplay or simple semantics. This is a shift in the way we process reality. That shift is the beginning of what we're calling unblending of freedom and of dignity. Because if it's a part, we can meet it, and self can lead. What is comfort? Well, before we discuss discomfort, let's name what comfort looks like, because it differs depending on where someone is in life. And even if we don't like to say these things out loud, deep down, I think we all know they are important to us all. Comfort is a number of things, and I'm going to list them. Having your preferences met. Being appreciated and told that you're appreciated. Having what you offer recognized. Feeling capable, valued, and at ease in yourself. Being in a group where you feel part of the tribe. Understanding the culture you're in. Not having to brace. A stable routine that's working. Your body being calm enough to sleep and think. And last but not least, trusting your own mind. That last one matters more than we admit, especially as we age. Certainty can collapse as stress accumulates, as the body changes, or as the brain changes. Word finding shifts, focus shifts, memory shifts. If dignity has been anchored in competence and sharpness, cognitive changes can quietly activate protectors, parts that overcompensate, withdraw, get rigidly right, or avoid exposure. Comfort is internal coherence. It's the nervous system saying, I'm safe here. I make sense here. I'm being seen correctly. I can stand down. Comfort isn't self-indulgence. It's alignment, expectation and reality matching well enough that you can exhale. Discomfort is when that alignment fractures. So, what is discomfort? Discomfort does not refer to abuse. Discomfort is not catastrophe. Discomfort is not existential annihilation, even if you have a part that's convinced that it is. Discomfort is the collapse of preferred conditions. It can be as small as a friend disagrees with you and the scene suddenly feels petty or mean. A friend misunderstands you, gets mad at you. You feel as if you aren't accurately seen with friends. You're not praised for what you bring to the table. You're no longer the expert in the room. The tribe shifts and you're suddenly outside the perimeter. The environment changes and you don't know the rules. Your brain doesn't work the way it used to. You lose words, you lose the thread, you forget names, you zone out, and the old sense of cognitive certainty begins to disintegrate. Discomfort is orientation failure. It's the moment when your internal map no longer matches the terrain, and you can feel it instantly. Wait, what just happened? Where am I standing now? And often, quietly underneath the adult storyline, something younger inside us is scanning. Is this one of those places where I wasn't safe? A part activates because when these kinds of events first occurred in our lives, we often weren't given a map for how to handle them ethically. We handled them the only way we knew how. At the time, it worked. It was adaptive. It kept us in relationship. It kept us protected. It kept us intact. That's conditioning. It's not a moral failing. It is a nervous system and parts-based learning history. Feelings aren't enemies. They're data. We need them to adapt. But discomfort makes everybody sad. Often underneath irritation, edge, or withdrawal, something important just became less secure. And because that sadness can be hard to feel, protectors do what they do. So let's talk about those early strategies. Protector and firefighter moves. When comfort collapses, the nervous system reaches for what it learned earlier. What worked in the past is automatically available. The brain takes the path of least resistance. These are the common protector part moves. Control. Tighten, correct, argue, dominate, manage reality. Collapse. Withdraw, shut down, go numb, go small. Blame. Locate the threat out there, build a case, moralize. And last, perform. Become charming, overfunction, become indispensable, prove worth. All four are attempts to reduce vulnerability and restore comfort as fast as possible. They're protective. None of these are character flaws. They are parts doing important jobs for us. IFS language helps us see the internal logic. Control and perform are often manager strategies. If I stay competent, correct, and in charge, I stay safe. Collapse and some forms of blame can function like firefighter strategies. End the feeling now. Get me out. Shut it down. These strategies often work in the short term. Hey, they reduce discomfort. They restore a sense of control. But they don't expand capacity. They don't metabolize the original burden. They don't update the system. So the system runs the same program again and again. This is where the ethical stakes come into view. If we can't tolerate discomfort inside, we will export it. We will discharge it onto partners, children, colleagues, clients, groups, scapegoats, and our own bodies. We'll become righteous to avoid shame. We'll become contentious to avoid tenderness. We'll become certain to avoid ambiguity. We'll become controlling to avoid fear. So, discomfort tolerance isn't merely self-regulation. It's the condition for ethical relationship. It's the capacity that lets us hold discomfort without making somebody else pay for it. That is a tier 1 capacity. In ethical adulthood, adult doesn't mean never getting activated. It means staying self-led when activation happens. An adult can feel the loss of comfort without scrambling to restore it. That's the capacity. IFS makes this more precise. The goal is not to eliminate protector reactions. The goal is to notice them, unblend from them, and lead from self. So that includes tolerating not being agreed with, not being admired, not being oriented, not knowing, not being included, and not being certain. In IFS, we are tender toward our protectors. We respect the system. We appreciate survival. And we're also firm about leadership. We don't ask a frightened 4-year-old apart to run an adult life. We don't ask an adolescent protector to decide the fate of a friendship or a marriage. We don't ask a firefighter part to author reality. We listen to them. We honor them. We get to know them. And slowly, we update them. Then we, as adults, can be internally destabilized and still remain behaviorally steady. Not perfect and not dead inside, just steady. In IFS terms, protectors may be loud, but they don't have to drive. Pressure is what happens when we're activated and we can't disengage without creating harm. We have to stay in it. Withdrawing over and over from a place where we actually want cooperative relationship isn't neutral. It becomes its own kind of harm for both people. Under pressure, we don't become someone else. We reveal how we treat people when we're uncomfortable. So under pressure, the question becomes, do we become smaller, sharper, crueler, more righteous, more fragile? Or do we remain available? Do we have enough self-energy in the room to shift toward? Pressure can intensify egoic strategizing, or it can push us, sometimes reluctantly, into self-leadership. The nervous system reality. Regulation is the doorway, not the destination. When comfort leaves, the body reacts first. Heart rate increases, jaw clenches, chest tightens, thinking narrows. An adult does not deny this. They work with it. Not by bypassing, I'm above all this. Not with slogans. Not with, I shouldn't be feeling this way. They pause. They attend to breath. They name the experience accurately. And then, this is the IFS piece. They turn inward and they ask, which part of me is activated and what is it trying to prevent? Because regulation is what opens the door to self. And self is what can actually relate to the part, appreciate its job, and help the system update. Let me give you a lived example and an IFS reading of it. When one kind of discomfort hits me, it often starts as anger. It's not explosive. It's more like a low grrr, like a match being struck in slow motion. In IFS terms, that match is often a protector arriving. I've learned I can act right away, which rarely goes well, or I can put that energy into repair inside my body and mind. I use the energy of the match to light a candle, to hold the intensity long enough to look at what it's lighting up. The candle starts telling stories. What's wrong? Who's wrong? What this means? What the future will be? I'm literally standing or sitting there in discomfort, looking at the floor, processing. I'm angry, I'm sad, I'm confused. This is where I have to be firm with myself. I am not going to make final conclusions from a lit candle. If I'm able to stay in relationship, I do. I explain what I'm feeling, why I'm disoriented, and I try to get clarity from the other side of the equation. A rupture has occurred. I seek repair. If that isn't available, I journal. I get support if I need it. And once I've processed what's happened, I return to ground. I have chores I do. I have writing I need to do. I have a yoga class to prepare for. Continuing my day without letting my mind compose a tragedy. So here's the IFS translation. A protector arrives. That's the match when discomfort is first noticed. The protector, a manager or a firefighter, offers a narrative to stabilize me. Candle stories. Self returns, not by shaming the protector, but by meeting her. She is seen, heard, and understood, and gently interrupted from leadership. I check reality and I choose grounded, self-led action. That's what steadiness can look like in real life. I'm not perfect, and this is not always how it goes. But I've learned that my life doesn't have to be a continuous replay of outdated strategies that come online automatically because of what happened to me when I was a kid or a teenager or a young adult. I have an IFS lens that helps me return to ground. And I'll say it simply, I'm not willing to live unconsciously if I want to be an ethical adult. And I do. I think we all do. Discomfort as development. Discomfort is developmental heat. Without it, we don't update our maps. We don't see blind spots. We don't build nervous system range. We don't refine discernment. We don't grow beyond tribe dependence. Comfort stabilizes identity. Discomfort evolves it so we can meet, experience, process it, and regain coherence no matter what is happening. IFS adds an important lens here. Discomfort is often the portal where we finally meet the part that's been running a protection program for years. If we can stay present, we can stop repeating old strategies and start updating the system. So this next part addresses the container question. This really matters. This work benefits from a container. Some people can do meaningful parts work alone, especially if they're resourced, oriented, and not routinely flooded. Reading No Bad Parts by Dr. Schwartz can be a solid entry point, and journaling can function as a kind of internal witnessing practice. And when protectors are extreme, when trauma is involved, when parts are very young, or when a system routinely gets hijacked, it is often easier and safer to do this work with a trained therapist. Not because clients are fragile, because some burdens were formed in isolation, and they soften fastest in the presence of steady connection. A simple, honest line I like is, some of you can do this alone. Some of this is better not done alone. The capacity for discomfort is simply the ability to remain ethically stable when your baseline level of comfort collapses. IFS informed, that becomes the ability to stabilize enough to access self, recognize the protector part that's activated, appreciate its protective intent, and choose behavior from self rather than from the part's emergency program. Patient, kind, firm. Stable enough not to let a moment of discomfort run the show.